Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Linda Lamp, and I'm here with my co-host, Mary Ardania, with our podcast, Let's Become a Beloved Society, Conversations Illuminating Your Path to Wholeness. I hope everyone's doing well today. It's been an interesting week, and I think it was a particularly interesting week based on our conversation last week, which was how do we deal with all of the lies and the fakery in the media, and how are we able to build a beloved society with all of that stuff going on. And before we take up the question at hand for today, I thought we should spend just a couple of minutes talking about how Fox News came to a settlement with Dominion voting machines over their defamation lawsuit. And they settled for something like, I don't know, $787.5 million, which is basically an admission of guilt. And if you're not familiar with this story, let me just briefly explain it for anybody who doesn't know. But Fox News is not news. It's many people call it faux news, and I don't even think it's that. But it's basically a corporate model of making money using the media any way they can. And that was what was going to come out had it gone to trial. Many, many statements and testimony from people stating that they went on the air and said things that they already knew to be blatantly false. They basically lied to make money. And the more they lied, the more money they made. So the more they lied. I don't have all the numbers. You can look up what the numbers are, how much money they made in the last 4, 6, 8 years lying. But in any case, the fact that they chose not to move forward to try and defend that position, that it was their business model. It wasn't lying, it was their business model. The fact that they chose to settle, I think, is a huge win for the American people, a huge win for our democracy, a win for our Constitution, and will set the precedents moving forward for misinformation and untruths. Mary?
I hope so. But, my reaction is a little different than yours because they settled. They didn't admit guilt, which I know that paying $787 million or something. I mean, why would you do that if you weren't guilty? But they didn't say they were guilty. And I don't know that there was any kind of sanctions such that they can't do that in the future. I don't think there's any sort of, and if they made enough money to be able to pay that penalty, which they clearly did, I just don't know if it's going to have enough of a deterring effect. This is my worry. And also that, there's no reports on Fox about this, of course. So the people who watch them and think that they're news still think so. You know what I mean? And if they do hear anything, I'm sure they'll just think, oh, witch hunt or something. So I know, though, that we are entering a new period, and this is a sign of someone being held to account for their falsehoods and everything. I just hope it's enough to change their business model.
I don't know that it'll change their business model. What we can hope is that people will turn away from it and they will go out of business because people will choose not to participate in a media platform where they never know what the truth is. so I want to say something, but I don't want to forget to say this. So I'm going to say this first because I think I'll remember the other thing better. This is only the first of many lawsuits against Fox.
Okay.
And the next one coming, I've been told, is much larger.
Oh, well, that's good.
And so I think it opened the floodgates for anybody that they've defamed in their entire history to come forward. And they've defamed a lot, and they've lied
Yes.
about a lot. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
So they moved
yeah,
from being entertaining to actually being misleading and lying and interfering with the truth in a way that will hopefully really shut them down ultimately by the people's choice.
I hope so.
Now, the other thing I wanted to say is, when I was growing up, there were people like Walter Cronkite, and David Brinkley.
News.
And I've been trying to imagine what it must be like for the people who have become attached to Fox News as their source of information. Because in a very real sense, I think that as a young person, I was just as attached to David Brinkley and Walter Cronkite. I thought the world of Walter Cronkite, absolutely adored him, hung on every word he said.
Right.
And there have been some other media news journalists that I have really revered. How would what would it be like to find out that those people were just making up stories to make money? I think I would be devastated, and I would be very confused, and I think it would cause me to question a lot about what I knew.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that that's part of why the young people have no faith in the media, because they see the media as it is today. And it's not Walter Cronkite by any means on any side.
Right.
But the other thing that's interesting to me is that, if we concede that a lot of the Fox News viewers skew older, which I think is true to some extent, those people grew up with Walter Cronkite too. And how do they not notice the difference? I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? Like, does this settlement in any way, shape, or form wake them up?
I think it depends, for one thing, on if they hear about it or not.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to be personally probably seeing some people that are big Fox News watchers, and I'm not going to be unafraid. I'm not going to be afraid to ask them, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
you heard this, right?
Yeah, I would totally ask people. I don't know that I know anybody who currently watches Fox that I talk to on the regular. So, but I'll think about that.
Right. I think it's a really big win for the First Amendment. I really do.
It is a big win for the First Amendment. I'm not sure it's a big enough loss for Fox. But if, like you say, there are more cases coming, that I find very encouraging.
Right. Because in a way, this conversation, I believe, dovetails into the question for today, right? The question for today is peace ever going to be possible? Well, straight up, you can say that peace is not going to be possible if people are continually lying about things. There's nothing peaceful about that. That's just disruptive. And disingenuous. And those are not words that would lead you to peace. So I feel as if, as we as a society start to get our arms around what the founding fathers meant when they put the First Amendment in, the right to freedom of speech, that they didn't mean freedom to lie. That wasn't what their intention was.
No, it really wasn't.
And now we're going to have some landmark cases at the corporate level.
Yeah.
And see, this is what's happened in America, right? We have this unfettered capitalism that has taken rule of our country.
Yeah.
And it's all about corporations making money
Yes.
off of the rest of us
Yes.
at whatever cost.
At whatever cost.
And so lying, sure, that's on whatever. Drug the people, sure, whatever. However,
destroy the environment.
Right, destroy the environment, whatever. You know, make the water so it makes everybody sick. Who cares? We're making money. We're making money.
Yeah.
So none of these things lead to peace. None of them. And so that's really the question. You know, is it possible? Is it ever going to be possible to have peace? And in pondering that question, some things have become really clear to me. That one thing being that this is actually at the core of what my being here is all about, is to bring forward a way to allow people to navigate themselves to peace within their own lives. Because within our own selves is where peace is.
Yes.
It isn't external, because technically this entire world is not really external. It's a hologram of a collective consciousness, and the true source of everything is from within each of us. And so if we cultivate peace within ourselves as we move through the world, as we see these atrocities that are happening, if we can find the way to navigate in a peaceful way, then yes, peace is possible. And I actually believe we can do this.
Yeah. When you read that question, Linda, or said that question, my answer was like, yes, of course, peace is possible within my own heart. And
Right.
that's where it has to
Right.
start.
Right. And I don't know if the watchers and listeners of this podcast realize that peace is the most common answer if you ask someone, what would you like for the world? Peace.
Yeah.
People want peace. What would you like in your own house or home or experience? And at that level, they may answer other things. They may say they want more money, or they may say they want, a relationship or something. But if you drill down through those answers, what they're really wanting is an experience of peace and harmony on earth. That's what each and every one of us truly want in our hearts. We're not after discord. We're not. We may have allowed ourselves and our egos to sweep us away into thinking that these problems in the external world around us are worthy of our attention and discord. But they're not. Where we really need to be focusing is, how are we being in the world? What are we being with ourselves and with those in our immediate circle? And how do we bring peace to ourselves at that level? Hi, Nanette. Great to have you here.
Hi,
We ran
Nance.
out of time. I was going to send you a reminder, and then we ran out of time before we went live. I'm glad you made it.
Yes.
And thank you to the other listeners and watchers that are here. So how do we cultivate peace within ourselves? And I was thinking about this the other day, and what I realized was, you know, even those of us who think we're doing good self-care are quite often overlooking aspects of care that we could be partaking in. And the thought that came to me was, if we treated our bodies, or if we treated our cars rather, the way we treat our bodies, we wouldn't really be able to go far for very long with our cars. Because even, I'm speaking personally about myself, right? I know that walking 10,000 steps a day is an important thing to do. And yet, I'm not doing it. And I have to stop and say, like, why am I not doing it? I know that it's a really great thing to do, and I know I'd feel better if I did it. And so why don't I do it? And that's where I have to really answer within myself and look within myself, because I'm the only one in charge here.
Yes. I would like to say 10,000 steps is a lot, and it feels overwhelming and impossible to me on a lot of days, because I walked 10,000 steps one day with a friend when he was visiting. So I know how much walking that is. It's a lot. And I just want to put it out there for everyone for whom 10,000 steps feels like a really big goal. 5,000 steps is great. I actually read this somewhere. It's like 5,000 steps is great. It's still a lot more than most of us are doing. So, this is something that I think is really important to extrapolate from, because a lot of times the goals that we have for our self care feel like a lot on the daily. Like,
Right.
it feels like a lot in these lives where we're very busy, we have a lot to do, and things have been rather challenging lately. So, I think sometimes scaling down our goals or just making it a little more graceful with ourselves. You know, it's like, if I can't do 10,000 steps, that doesn't mean I don't walk at all, right? How
Right.
about walk for half an hour a day
Right.
and start there?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I think what I'm suggesting is that rather than allowing the other things that we're too busy to do, that, that keep us from making the time, because here's the thing, walking is also the easiest thing to do. Of
Yeah.
all the exercises that are out there, it is the easiest thing to do. Now, if you've got a bad hip or a bad knee or a bad back, this isn't true for you. But if you're someone who is doesn't have a physical anomaly going on, walking is the easiest exercise there is. And yeah, you can get on a treadmill and you can get your time in that way. But I think that there's a value in so this is one of the things that's happened, right? Life has just gotten way too fast. And one of the things that just making a point of attempting to walk 10,000 steps a day will do for you is slow things down. And you don't have to do it all at once either. It can be 4 short walks as opposed to, 1 5-mile trek or whatever the 10,000 steps end up being. There are a lot of days where I hit 10,000 steps and I'm surprised, right? If I'm just busy and engaged and working on my property, I can get 10,000 steps in a day really easily. But when it's wicked weather out and it's icy and nasty, it's hard to get 2,500 steps in. So You
But
know?
for instance, I work in an office,
Right.
so I can't just get 10,000 steps in over the course of a day.
No.
I know from experience that if I get 5 to 7,000 steps in, and that's with taking extra walks here and there, that's good for me. So, that's a factor too. And like there's
Right.
limited time in the day. I just know for me personally, 10,000 steps is never going to happen unless I figure out a way to work while I'm running around, you know. Now, if I had a standing desk and could jog, maybe. Um, do you want to read that comment there, Linda? You look like
I
you're
do.
reading.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
do. So here's a comment from a viewer. I also think our youth and generation are having the yearn for peace is making a difference. All of my social medias are showing me kids around my age talking and working to fix what has been broken in our society. And thank you for this comment, because Mary and I were talking before we went live about
Yes.
this, that it is the young people that are going to actually turn this ship around. And I believe I'm here to be a helper in that movement. That's
Right.
exactly where I see myself fitting into all of this. It's
Right. Me
becoming
too.
clearer and clearer every day that peace should be the objective, because peace can only be achieved through peace within ourselves. And that's where the healing comes in. So, people sometimes will say, well, are you a healer? And, you know, my answer is sort of like, not really, because you do your own healing. I'm
Right.
just here to shine a light on the way to get there.
Right. A facilitator.
Right,
It's hard to really position yourself in the way our society has these conversations.
right, right,
But yeah, it's like I consider myself someone who works with energy
right,
and facilitates somebody else's growth.
right.
I don't even want to call it healing, growth, because healing implies that we're broken. And yes, we all have things that maybe were dysfunctional in our growing up. And also, that doesn't mean that there's really anything wrong with us.
Beautiful transition, Mary. Absolutely beautiful, because this is really where so much of this is coming clear to me. We are so traumatized,
Yes.
individually and collectively.
Yeah.
And individually, each of us have probably sustained some trauma in this lifetime when we were pre-verbal.
Yeah.
And those traumas can still be trapped within us and can be influencing us, even though we think we're healed and happy and whole. We can still have these elements within ourselves that need healing, and that are subliminally, or subconsciously rather, influencing our behaviors and our perceptions, and we're not even realizing it. And then you add on to it the traumas that we can remember, and the one of our viewers was just going to say, I was just going to mention generational trauma.
Right.
So, we have the traumas that are handed down from our parents because they were traumatized and they treated us the same. And it just goes on and on and on. Some people call it the chain of pain, right? It's that chain of pain, because when I'm hurting, then I want other people to be hurting. That is the unconscious way that we deal with our pain. Hurt people hurt people. And so I've had several conversations recently with people about healing and about our bodies and about the memories that our cells have. And 2 or 3 people in short order all asked me if I had read this book, The Body Keeps the
Mm.
Score. And so I got it and I'm reading it. And it's absolutely fascinating because what I can see are the patterns of control that we have in our society in various, so there's the pattern of control within the government, and then there's the pattern of control within religion, and then there's the pattern of control within the medical field. And it's really all about not letting us be who we are and making us be who other people want us to be. And this is the real ascension that we're going through on this planet right now, is moving into a place of our individual singular divinity.
Mm.
And being able to be who we are,
Mm-hmm.
not who our parents want us to be, or our teacher, or our coach, or our priest, or whatever, but being who we are, which comes from within us, not from the exterior into us.
Right.
I think there was something in here I just wanted to. So I ought to just read this short passage. It is from chapter 2. It's the last It's the last paragraph or two in chapter 2 of this book. Adaptation or disease is the heading in this section. The brain disease model overlooks 4 fundamental truths. 1, our capacity to destroy one another is matched by our capacity to heal one another. So when you think about, is peace possible? You know, it is possible. And it's actually more likely that we can heal one another than we need to destroy one another. Restoring relationships and community is central to restoring well-being. 2, language gives us the power to change ourselves and others by communicating our experiences, helping us to define what we know and finding a common sense of meaning. 3, we have the ability to regulate our own physiology, including some of the so-called involuntary functions of the body and brain, through such basic activities as breathing, moving, and touching. And 4, we can change social conditions to create environments in which children and adults can feel safe and where they can thrive. When we ignore these quintessential dimensions of humanity, we deprive people of ways to heal from trauma and restore their autonomy. Being a patient rather than a participant in one's healing process separates suffering people from their community and alienates them from an inner sense of self. Given the limitations of drugs, I started to wonder if we could find more natural ways to help people with their post-traumatic responses. Okay, hang on. We've got a comment here. It really struck me when you said you're here to move others with your words, with your words, or a wordsmith. And not only do I love that, but I really feel you have helped me find part of myself in that way. And you've helped me show and move others, which to me just shows how well you've used your gift. Well, boy, that I am honored by that comment. Thank you so much. That is such a beautiful, beautiful reflection. I really appreciate that. Thank you. But I really believe, so when I was a teenager, I did volunteer work, and I did volunteer work in a mental hospital. And I got to tell you that even at the age of like 12, I could tell that there was really nothing wrong with those people. They weren't crazy the way they had been labeled. They just were either in a different timeline, or they had a part of their soul stuck somewhere else. But what's fascinating to me is that today, of all days, for it to pop up in my news feed, it was an article in the New York Times. See if I can find it really quick, so I can just give you an overview of it. It's amazing. A radical experiment in mental health care tested over the centuries. So in the Belgian town of, and they say how to pronounce it later, but it's spelled Geel. And I wasn't able to completely finish the article before we went live. But basically, in that town in Belgium, they don't treat crazy people like crazy people. They take them in, they give them homes, they work with them, they help them have full functioning lives, even though they think they're the Prince of England or whatever might be going on with them. And it just strikes me that we may be on the precipice of really grasping the idea that we are really different than what we've been told we are. And that if we can look at each other, each as individually unique, and rather than say, oh, that's different, I don't know how to deal with that, let's put you in a cell somewhere because nobody understands you, that there's another path forward besides that choice. And that truly, if we were to understand, hang on a second, because I need to clear my throat. Thank you for that. If we were to truly understand that the plot of the play of life on Earth in human form is to create and experience heaven on Earth by being creatures of hope, love, and grace in service to one another through kindness and compassion. If everyone, when they were born, were taught that statement right there, we wouldn't need to find our way to peace. We would be peace. We would create peace. We would approach things in a peaceful manner because we wouldn't be judging and separating each other and labeling each other and abusing each other.
I want to clarify one of the things you said, which is allowing people to be different. And I would say allowing people to be different without having to make them wrong or bad. Because that's what happens in our culture, is we make them wrong or bad. And then we have to lock them up. So just clarifying what you were saying, putting clear words, you know.
Right. And with no judgment, no labels.
Yeah. Right. Just allowing each of us to be our own self and all the diversity of that.
Right. Right. I spent a week once with a family that had a little boy that had been labeled, I don't know, a bunch of labels, ADHD, blah, 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 blah. There wasn't anything wrong with that kid. There wasn't. There were moments where the external world was too stimulating for him. And so once you know that, you modify things and you make the environment that you're asking him to be in not one that's going to set him off. That's not wrong with him.
No.
That's just everything's energy.
Yeah.
And we're all vibrating at our own unique frequency.
Right.
And each one of us is absolutely unique. I believe even identical twins, if you measure their frequency, you will or imprint,
Yeah.
their frequency imprint, they will be different, even though they're
Yeah.
identical twins.
Yeah. Identical twins are not totally identical. I mean, yes, they're identical twins. And yet I think about a pair of identical twins I knew and I could tell them apart. You know, sure, they were identical, but the energy of them was completely different. So I knew which was
Right.
which.
Right.
And the other thing, energy, oh, well, it's gone. Yeah. What you said, and something else that I don't remember.
So that statement that I read, the plot of the play, this is the true and complete meaning of the phrase, the will of God. And you know that you hear that phrase if you go to church or you talk to a whole variety of different kinds of Christians, you'll hear that phrase used a lot. The will of God, the will of God, the will of God. The will of God is that the plot of the play of life on earth in human form is to create and experience heaven on earth by being creatures of hope, love, and grace in service to one another through compassion and kindness. That's the will of God. Anything else, not the will of God. Regulating women's bodies, who can have a baby when, not the will of God. Punishing people for whatever, not the will of God. All of that falls outside of the will of God. So you can see where most religions end up having moved themselves really into places that are quite far from what the true will of God is.
But
So,
that's because most religions are concerned with controlling, like you said.
right,
I
right,
remember the other thing I wanted to say, which was about when you're talking about the people and there's nothing wrong with them. I was looking at a book the other day on ADHD, and his point was that it's basically a response to the society we live in. Like it's not the way we think of it as there's something wrong with this person. It's like this person is responding to the society we live in and the way that they were raised and like what resources they needed and didn't get, just like again, a sensitive person who responds differently needs a little bit of different direction in
right,
how to do it,
right, right,
right?
right, right. And a lot of, there are a lot of us that we think that everyone sees what's here, but that isn't how our eyes work even.
Right.
It isn't how sight works. And so everything about my experience of life is unique to me.
Right.
And everything about your experience of life is unique to you.
Right.
And how we create peace is to make space for that, to allow everyone their own unique experience, because that's what they're having. And
Right.
it's not for us to tell anyone what
Right.
experience they're having.
Right. Exactly. One way to help with the having peace around other people having their own experiences without feeling like I have to butt my nose in there is to just notice when you're judging. So I literally just say, Mary judging, to bring my attention to the fact that I'm looking at someone and thinking, well, they should blah, blah. No, they shouldn't. If I want to, that's my business. But like, I'm judging them right then. And it just reminds me that that doesn't need to happen and I can stop it. in that moment, and get back in my yard.
Right. And that's where the two words compassionate and kind, I think, really come in,
Yeah.
because I was having a discussion with somebody here the other day about how they went down to the beach, and it was like, Atlantic City, and tons of people, and all people with boom boxes and all kinds of stuff. And they were expressing their frustration that, their experience of going to the beach
Right.
is a quiet, relaxing, listening to the seagulls, watching the sea lions, go by. And instead, their experience in that moment was one of a lot of disruption and noise, and how inconsiderate. Why is it that other people think you want to hear their music?
We've had that conversation.
Right? Actually, this is one of the toughest things. When you leave your house, now you're not in control of what's happening all around out here. And how do you move through the world in a peaceful fashion without judging and without, persecuting people and all of that, and stay harmonious when at the same time some of the things that you're really wanting or feeling a need for are being denied to you? It's a challenge, right? I didn't come to the beach to listen to your music. So what do? Do you get mad? Do you yell at them? Do you go tell them to shut their music off? You've had that problem on the trolley. You didn't get on the trolley to listen to their music. And so, what would, if we're wanting to create a peaceful society, a beloved society, what is the method of practice in that moment?
I mean, I don't usually ask people to turn their things down, because I've lived in lots of places where somebody might just haul off and punch you. So, truth, I've been punched for less. On a subway platform in New York, I was punched for no reason.
Oh,
So,
Lord.
it kind of colors my view of interacting with people who I don't know. It's absolutely true. So I usually don't say anything, and I usually try to find peace somehow on my own. And that is with varying degrees of success. And there are different options. And like one of them is I try to make myself transparent so that the sound kind of doesn't hit up against a barrier in me. It can just roll through or over or around. But
Right.
like I try to just release the resistance in me to the sound or to whatever is going on with that other person over there who I wish weren't in my space.
Right.
Sometimes I might move to put more space between them, like go to a different car of the trolley so you could move further down the beach. There's also earplugs, and I have not yet started carrying them in my purse, but I have considered it. So, that's
Right.
how I deal with it, is I just try to find ways to get back into myself and find my own peace. And sometimes, like I said, it works better than others.
Right. Right. And I agree. It is because the answer is it has to come from within us, right? The solution
Yes.
has to come from within us. It's not
Yeah.
an external thing. That
No.
thing's bugging you. That's about you. It's really not about them, right?
Exactly.
It's
It's
not about
about the resistance it hits in me.
right, right, right. And it's about our when we're feeling like we're not getting what we need. It's about our perception of what's happening. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I'll do, though, and this isn't so much like the boombox, but you could do it in this, I could do it under this circumstance as well, actually. But when I drive, and because I live in, where I live, and I have, 120 miles of mostly wilderness to drive through, I like to do it without any cars around me. I like it when there's nobody behind me on the highway or in front of me, mostly behind me. In front of me, I can, deal with, but I mean, I like them to not, I like to just have the road to myself. But
Right.
if I can't have the road to myself, I really don't like it when there's people behind me. And there's a couple of places on the highway where people will turn off. And especially if there's a big long line behind me, I'll send that energy out there. Everybody needs to take a potty break, or everybody's hungry. Aren't you all hungry? Don't you need to go to the bathroom? Don't you want a cup of coffee? And it's amazing how many times people will actually turn off, and I'll end up with nobody behind me. And then I come to another place where that happens, and instead it's like, well, you need to go to this town, and don't you need to go to that town, and isn't that town calling your name? And same thing will happen. All these cars will just turn off, and I'll end up with nobody behind me. I've never really thought of trying that at the beach, but then I guess I've got to say that I don't have that experience that often of there people being boom boxes at the beach. And the other thing is that if it's a day where there's boom boxes at the beach, I just got to smile and go, look at this. Look at all the happy people came to the beach. And
Yeah.
I just let it go. I mean, it's reasonable to expect peace and quiet in some places, but it's actually not reasonable to expect peace and quiet on a trolley, probably, or in a subway.
I don't think it's unreasonable to expect people not to play their boom boxes loud, because there's literally signs saying no radios.
Well, if there's
On the
sun,
beach, I expect people to play the boom box
right,
on the beach. You're
right,
at the beach, you're having fun, it's a
right,
party. But
right.
playing your boom boxes loud on the train is specifically rude, I think, and I always will.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're
Especially if
trapped in
there's
there.
signs. If it's posted that you're not supposed to be doing it, then
It is on every one I've ever been on.
right, right, right. And so, yeah, that becomes a little more problematic, because then you can kind of get hung up in the idea of, well, there's somebody not following the rules, and who knows, maybe they can't read. I mean, I don't know. I just I really work when I'm in those situations to not take that judgment on, and to just get a song playing in my own head, and just go inside, and not allow it to agitate me, which isn't, I'm not suggesting that's always easy to do, but it is problematic when people are doing things that are clearly like there's a sign right there that says don't do that.
And I really don't care if they're eating or drinking, which they're also not supposed to do, unless they spill their drink on me, then I mind. But
Right.
it's the music loud impinges on everyone. That's what bothers me. Anyway.
Right. Or don't take it personally. Right. Well, it's never personal, I don't think, when it's somebody on the bus, unless they've pointed their boombox at you. So, peace from within.
From within. That's where it's got to come from, because it's never going to come from without unless you're lucky enough to be like in some beautiful ashram place for a brief period of time. And even then, who knows? I mean, like I've been to some meditation gardens where it's got a very peaceful vibe. But even then, someone might come in and do something you're not happy with. So,
Right.
hence, from within.
Right. Right. We always have the power to change our minds.
Yes. And that is the only thing that we always have the power to change. And that's, back to that other thing I think we talked about last time, which is nothing has any meaning except the meaning we give to it.
Right.
Like whatever's happening out there just is. It just is what it is. And we are the ones who imbue our experiences with meaning. And that has been very helpful to me, because why would I want to give it a negative, awful meaning? Like, why
Right.
would I want to believe that this person is doing something specifically against me when I could just believe that they're clueless and don't know any better, right? Something like that. It's like, anyway, I'd rather believe that the universe is for me than against me. That's another example.
Well, and that's a true statement. Nanette makes a great comment. I find that if possible, find something to compliment on that person authentically. You'll see a big change 9 times out of 10. Right. Right.
I'll try looking for that next
And
time.
there's the other thing too of, if you engage the person, they might have to turn their music down just because they need to turn it down so they can hear you talking.
Sometimes that's feasible. Other times, trust me, you really don't want to engage these people. Sometimes it's a deliberate thing that they're doing to
Yeah.
keep people away from them and maybe uncomfortable. Who knows?
Right. Right.
Some people are more engageable than others.
Right. Right. But those people that you find are probably not as engageable or as desirable to engage with, remember, they're the result of being treated this way, right?
Right.
They're people who probably been marginalized in their lives
Right.
multiple times, and so it just holding love in your heart
Yes.
for their marginalization may actually shift the energy in the trolley.
And I do that sometimes in my
Yeah.
space.
Right. Right.
Not in their space.
No, not in their space. You have to do it within yourself.
Yes.
And also, it's perfectly fair to acknowledge that at the end of a long day at work, you may not have, or whoever listening may not have it left in them to spend a lot of time being compassionate to somebody who's being rude on the trolley.
Especially after being compassionate all day in my job.
Exactly. And this is where, that whole idea of self-care comes in,
Yes.
right? We have to, and this is, we're not trained this way. We are actually trained and taught that we should be, doing things for other people. That's a lot of people have been raised that way, that you do stuff for other people. But you have to, it's come right back to the airplane. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. If you don't put your oxygen mask on first, you're going to be useless very quickly. You might help the first guy, and then you're going to be done. There won't be anything left to you because you didn't take care of yourself. And so this is where it has to start. It has to start in each of us cultivating that self-care, that love of our own divinity. And once we've cultivated that, then we'll have extra to love other people in their divinity and love the more challenging. It's easy to love a cute baby. It's very hard to love the smelly, homeless guy with the boombox.
The boombox guys aren't usually smelly and homeless.
Well,
Those are two separate groups on the trolley, just
either way,
FYI.
you know,
But
either
yeah.
group, either group, either group.
Yeah, I just wanted to second giving from your overflow
Right,
instead of dipping into your own tank.
right,
You know, sometimes you might have to if you have someone important to you who's in a crisis and you aren't really at your best, but you do feel a need to be supportive. But it's really important that we don't deplete our own resources too
right.
much in the service of others.
Exactly, exactly.
Especially, I mean, a lot of times that is specifically women who are trained to take care of everybody,
Right.
mothers and wives with their husbands and children and everything. And, you know, I don't have those draws on me, but I have other draws, and just we need to,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
fuel our own tanks.
Right. Right.
I spend a certain amount of time telling my friends and loved ones who mostly are female, but also not. It's okay to prioritize your own joy. In fact, that's part of why we're here, is to experience joy. What is
Absolutely.
heaven on earth? I mean, peace, sure, but also joy, the
Right.
ecstasy of
Right.
connection with the planet and the
Right.
plants and the ocean and the birds. And
Right.
I mean, you know, it's like, to me, connecting to nature is the place where we often find our joy. And it's so important.
Bye, Jordan. My granddaughter was watching. I love you
Mhm.
too.
That's
Thanks for
nice.
being here. Um, yes, yes. And I think that without peace, we really don't get to joy.
No, I
Right?
think that after you get to peace, then you can look for joy.
And that's why I think it's such a foundational piece of what we're going through on earth right now is there is a strong urge for peace, and there's not a lot of peace at the moment.
And peace requires slowing down. It really does. Slow down, take a breath, and look inside and connect. You know, we can't get to peace if we're just running around like crazy people all the time.
Right, right. And we're about 2 minutes from the end, so I just want to do a little wrap up. I've been reminded by a few people that I quite often forget to say how to reach out to us. So we've had it on the screen. If you wanted to call in or want to call in or leave a message or text, that number's 1-907-351-3003. If you submit your questions this week, we'll take them up next week. You can also go to my website, lindalamp.com. That's LYNDALAMP.com, or LAMP, or lindalamp.shop. That also will get you, again, LYNDALAMP.shop. You can send your questions to questions@walkingthroughyourwalls.com. If you'd like to reach out to Mary directly, marylaughsloud@gmail.com. So thank you all for being here. I do believe we'll be here next week. And I know I've got a weekend or a Friday in May, I believe the 19th. We won't be able to do a broadcast. But other than that, I think we should be here for the next couple of weeks. So thank you again, everyone. Hope to hear from you in the meantime.
Yes.
And we'll take up your questions again next week.
Yes.
Namaste and much love. Well, I clicked it.